Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. All right, once again, I hope everybody is doing well, staying healthy and safe and sane out there. I am here today with a look at Tomb, and I have been messing around with this game for the last couple of days, trying to develop a better solo variant than the one that is in the rulebook. So Tomb is a game from AEG, and it was designed by a man named John Zenser. And this is the original rulebook. So I have everything set up from the original game and from the Crypt Masters expansion. I absolutely love the cover of this rulebook. That is so cool looking. Very, very good art. Unfortunately, the rulebook itself is absolutely terrible. This was one of the games that I played during my kind of like second phase of board games, I call it, from like 2004 to about 2010. And during those periods, this was one of the worst rulebooks that we encountered. It's very vague and doesn't do a good job. And the solo rules in here they're practically non-existent. One of the things that Tomb has going for it is an abundance of awesome things, of cards basically, and art. Just look at this list of artists who worked on the art in this game. There are so many pieces of awesome original art in this game that it's kind of hard to imagine, because this is only two games, and that's all they released for this game. They released one game and then another standalone boxed expansion. But with those two boxes, you get a huge stack of encounter cards, and every single one of these cards is different. And every single one has a unique piece of art. That is just so cool. This game might have like the most unique art, or the most pieces of unique art, outside of something like Magic. But there are basically three kinds of encounters that you're going to be dealing with in this game. You're going to be looking for treasure. So there's all kinds of treasure cards. You're going to have to be fighting monsters to get to that treasure. And you're also going to have to be dealing with traps. That's another thing that this game has, is an abundance of traps. More dungeon crawls need more traps. I am a firm believer in that. That is my political stance for 2020. More traps. And then there's a fourth type, which are a little rarer to come across, but those are curses. But you can just see, like, flipping through this, there are so many cool pieces of art. Not all of the art is great, but a lot of it is very good. Some of it is brilliant. Some of it is passable. But just the fact that there is so much is really, really cool, especially for people like us who the art in these kinds of games really does a lot to draw us into these worlds. So these are the encounter cards. These are the Tomb cards, and I usually set those up. I don't keep them in one big stack because it's a little unwieldy to do that. So I usually split them up into three or so different stacks. Another element in this game, of which there is an abundance of, are characters. So this is a game that, as a player, you are building a adventuring party, and you are going into the tomb that are on these boards. The tombs are static. They're always going to have the same layout. However, with both of these base games, you get two boards, and each one is double-sided with kind of like an easier side and a harder side. I believe this is the easier side from the Crypt Master expansion. So you're going to be building a party. You're going to start your game in the inn here. and you're going to be able to have different cards from the inn. There are spells, there are tactics, there are prayers and items. And you're going to be putting together a party of adventurers to go into the tomb, kill the monsters, disarm the traps, collect the treasure, and try to get the most points. At its core, it is very much a competitive game. However, even as a competitive game, it's only okay. It's a long game. I haven't played it competitively in many years since I first played it whenever it came out. But I remember it being quite long, and towards the end feeling long. But another thing, like I was saying, that this game has an abundance of are characters. Every single one of these cardboard tokens is a unique character, including the 20 that I have in here that we'll talk about in a minute. It's a unique character with unique art, stats, and powers. This game has so many characters, and sometimes I just love just looking through all of the different characters and their art. And there are 4 different classes. So we have wizards. These 3, they look the same, but they're actually he can split into 3 different versions of himself. And depending on how many of those you have in your party, he gets stronger. There are clerics. There are, let's see, wizards, clerics. So this guy's a split. He's a cleric, fighter, and a wizard. Ah, man, I love that art. That's really good. And I also like that it names the artist on every piece of art, kind of like, Magic the Gathering would do. You have fighters and rogues. So this guy is a cleric, rogue, wizard. So as you can see, there are just a ton of different characters. And on the backs of all the characters, it does list their stats, and each character has a special ability. So this tells you your dice pools that you're going to be building. So when you're attacking, you're going to have green, blue, and red dice. Green are the weakest, blue's middle, red is strongest. And then you're going to be, depending on the attribute that you're going to be testing, you're going to be building your dice pool. So if this guy was to attack, he would only attack with 1 blue D10. He's a cleric, so he's not really a fighter. But every character, has unique stats, a name, a power, and a certain amount of hit points, and a class, and a piece of art. And like I said, every single one is different. So there is an abundance of unique materials and components in this game. And it's all super evocative with a ton of awesome art and potential, right? So this game has the potential to be amazing. Unfortunately, it's not amazing. It's okay. And I really do think that there is a good game bubbling just underneath the surface of everything, and with a little tweaking, I think Tomb could be an awesome game because it is unique in that you're building a party. It focuses on competitive nature to where you can backstab your opponents a lot. There's a lot of take that in it. So when you play solo, it loses those elements. But I've been working to develop a better solo variant, and I'm not there yet. And I wish I had, if there's like one game that I could make into a great game, it would probably be Tomb. Basically just because of how much stuff is here that's already pretty cool. It's almost there. But I'm going to show you a little bit about how I am developing a solo version of this game. So I have the board set up, and this is how you set it up normally. You put a number of tomb cards into each crypt as dictated by the crypt's entrance. So this has 2 cards. Most of these have 2 or 1 on the easy side. And there are a number of different places you can enter the tomb. And so at the beginning of my solo variant, what I do is, so this is my party marker. I'm going to be moving this around. So we start in the end, and I have 20 characters that I've chosen at random to be in this bag. This is a standard solo game as described in the rules. And every time we go back to the end, we can fill our party up to 4 characters. And so I'm going to draw one at a time from this bag. And if I draw a fighter, I get to draw an item card to pull into my hand. If I draw a cleric, I get to draw a prayer card to put into my hand. If I draw a rogue, I get to draw a tactics card to put into my hand. And if I draw a wizard, I get to draw a spell card to put into my hand. If I draw a character that is multi-class, I get to draw one of each of those cards. So let's build our party and see what our starting gear is. The first character I drew is Frederick Lar. All right, he is a cleric. So he has the other characters in your party gain +2 green attack and +2 blue skill dice. Okay, so that's a really cool card. He is quite powerful because he boosts all the other characters in my party. So he's a cleric. So because I drew a cleric, I'm going to draw one prayer card to pull into my hand. And what did we draw? Let's see, Divine Speed, it's a prayer. So this is a reaction. When monster cards are revealed, make a holiness roll. Holiness is this green stat down here. All right, for every 2 successes, one of your characters may attack before the monster's first attack. Now, to use a prayer, one of the heroes in your party needs to have at least 1 holiness. Okay, so he has a 5, so that's good. This prayer will go into my hand. Okay, our second character that we're going to draw here is Rickert Darpor. All right, he is a rogue. And his has a +4 movement. So in the solo game, movement isn't so important, but I have developed one thing that makes it a little more important to the solo game. We'll talk about that in a minute. So he's a rogue, so we're going to draw a tactics card, which are these green-backed cards here. So tactics, sniper shot. React, when you attack, roll skill dice instead of attack dice. So I can have him use his skill dice instead of his attack dice to attack. So normally he would roll 3 blue dice, but if I use that reaction, that tactics card for him, I can roll 2, 2, and 1. So it makes his attack much more powerful. So we'll give that tactics card to him, and then we're going to give this prayer card to Frederick Lar. All right, our third character that's going to be in our party here is the fighter rogue. And that is Taliesin. And another a +3 move. So I'm going to be moving around a lot. And when Taliesin is targeted by an enemy, select a new target in this party. So that is more of an aspect that you would use in a competitive game, because in a competitive game, your other players are going to be controlling the traps and monsters that are going to be appearing in the crypts, and they get to choose the target. And so this would allow you to actually choose a target. So there are some abilities that definitely are a little nerfed when you're playing solo. I'm sure there are ways to modify them to make them more beneficial to a solo game. But anyways, he's a fighter rogue. So we're going to draw a tactics card, and we're going to draw an item card. So let's see our tactics card. We got a fatal mistake. When any character rolls 0 successes, kill that character. So here I would substitute the word character for monster. So if we're attacking a monster and a monster rolls all misses, we can use this fatal mistake card to kill that monster. And then he is going to be armed here with a double-bladed sword. Perform 1 extra combat action each combat round. And the attacks are pretty weak. This adds to the attack here. So it would add 1 green and 1 blue. So we're going to go ahead and equip that to Taliesin. And then our final character we're going to draw here is the Mirren Faithbringer, and he is a cleric. When one of your characters suffers wounds, make a holiness roll with a target number of 3, which means we have to roll 3 green, 2 blue, and 1 red die, and we have to get at least 3 successes. If successful, that character suffers 1 less wound. And since he's a cleric, we're going to draw a prayer card, and he has Godly Touch. All dice rolled during this test of this raid become blue dice. Okay. And so there we have our party. And we have our cards attached to the characters. We could move those around, but I decided to give them to each of the characters that drew them. But that is not something that I have to do. And now the last thing I do is I take this D4 and I roll it. And then I rolled a 2. So that's going to allow me to draw 2 cards from either of these decks. So I think I'm going to go ahead and draw a spell and an item. Oops, I just dropped an item on the ground. All right, so an item, we have the medicine bag. When your party removes wounds, remove up to 2 additional wounds, and this will give whoever has this item +2 to their holiness. And then we also have this charm, which is a spell. Oh my gosh, okay, so react. When a monster cards are revealed, target one monster and make a magic roll. If you roll more successes than the monster's XP value, the monster joins your party for the duration of the combat. Bank the monster after all monsters are killed. This spell is the caster's action for the first combat round. Discard this card. So I'm going to give this to somebody who already has some magic, which would be Taliesin here. And he has a few magic dice, so he's going to be also armed with this spell along with his sword and that tactic. And then I'm also going to give the medicine bag to one of my clerics. I'm going to go ahead and give that to Frederick Lauer here. So he has this prayer and the medicine bag. So after we've built our party in this variant, we then enter the tomb at one of the entrances. So to keep things simple here, I will just go ahead and move and start here. So your normal movement is 10, but I have +5, or no, +7, so I can move 17 spaces. Now, as I was saying before, movement in the single player game is really not as important because you're not really a race. To win the single player game, you have to clear every tomb card in the crypt, or every crypt. You have to clear every crypt in the tomb, tombs and crypts, crypts and tombs, without running out of party members. So there are, like I said, we started with 20 heroes. There are now 16 left in this bag. My party's max is 4. So I need to clear out every card on this board without 20 characters dying. Now, characters die in this game like it's going out of style. The character's 3 hit points is a lot of hit points. Most characters, I believe, have around 2. And you really do get, don't get attached to characters in this game. They are fodder. But in order to add some relevance to the movement, what I've done is I've taken 2 other party markers here, and I consider these to be roaming monsters, okay? And so at the end of each of my turns, I'm going to roll a single D6 for each one, the red one for him and the blue one for him. And I will move them that many spaces. And if they ever land on the space that my party marker is on, I draw a random tomb card. And my party has to face that card. Now, if I draw a treasure card and I have a rogue in my party, I can try to pickpocket this and steal this treasure from the monster. And there are actually PvP rules for pickpocketing that I will follow. So if I had drawn that, I would have to draw that to try to steal that treasure. If you draw a monster, then you have to face that monster in the hallways, just as you would fighting a monster in a crypt. And then finally, if you were to draw a trap, which I can't believe I haven't found a trap yet, but if you were to draw a trap, then you would have to face that trap in the hallway. So it gives a little bit of randomness to moving around and having to have some encounters while you are moving from crypt to crypt. Additionally, there is an element that was introduced in the expansion called the Crypt Master cards. And that is a small deck of cards that your competing players would be able to draw from to use to make the encounters more difficult. And each of the each of the rooms here has an R or an L. And that would tell you who is going to be in charge. So if you were playing 3 players and you moved into this tomb and it was an L there, then the player to your left would be the Crypt Master for that raid, and they would be controlling all the bad cards. If it was an R, the player to your right. That doesn't really matter in the single player game, but what I do is when we go in here and there's a chance for the Crypt Master to be able to do something, I roll a d6, and on an even, I draw one of these cards and apply its effects if possible. And I think that's about it. That is pretty much how I am playing Tomb as a single player game. It's not perfect. There are still a lot of abilities that you kind of have to mod on the fly because they are like more PvP style, but I'm having fun with it, and I just wish there was a better game, because all of these cards here, all of these cards that have different encounters are so cool, and there are so many of them. And then you also have a whole deck of different bosses. And I haven't quite figured out how to get one of these bosses into the game. I'm thinking maybe if you play, you can have the center room have to be, you could have this have to be the last room you raid, and just take a random boss here and put that on top, and then you have to kill that boss before you can get the final room cleared. And as you clear stuff from the tombs, you're going to be looking for XP, and those are going to be your total, your score total, basically at the end of the game. So you are just kind of playing for score. There's not a narrative in this game per se. But so, what I would do is I would say, okay, I'm going to come here. I'm going to go ahead and move 1, 2, 3. So you only get 1 action per turn. So on that first turn, I would move. All right, and then I would go ahead and roll for my roaming monsters. And so the red guy would move 1, and they always move towards the player. And this blue guy would move 4. So there really isn't a route to me from this way. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, come around this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then for my second turn, I would say I'm going to raid this crypt. So I would move into there, and then I would roll my d6, and on, let's say, an even, I draw a Crypt Master card. Okay, a 2. So we have this Crypt Master card. So the Crypt Master reacts. When a raid is announced, okay, it was just announced, the party must make an attack check, a DC 3 times the number of characters in the party. If the check fails, the party remains where it is, and the turn immediately ends. So, okay, so this crypt here is being blocked by this door. And in order to actually get into this crypt, I have to pass this test. And that's a DC 3 times the number of characters in the party, so 12. And then you would roll your dice, and you would figure out if you can get into that tomb or not. Okay, so let's try a different tomb. So let's say that was the end of my turn and I didn't get into that door. So we would roll for a random our monsters. The red guy's going to move 1, blue guy's going to move 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. And then let's say I wanted to move here. So for that turn, I would move to that crypt. We would roll our monster roll. 1, 2. The blue moves 2. 1, 2. Okay, now for this turn, I want to raid this crypt here. Oops. And I roll the 3, so no Crypt Master card. And now I would look at these. And so you have to do traps first, then monsters, and then treasure. So if I were to kill this monster, I would get this piece of treasure. And this says, so this is a Melfit. And when the Melfit is killed, draw 2 cards from the index. So if I kill him, I would also get to draw 2 additional end cards to add to my party's inventory. And then if I kill him, this target, on a turn, you can target another party, make a holiness roll. For each success, inflict 1 wound on the character in that party. So this is a treasure that really doesn't have any use in a single player game, except for points at the end of the game. And so yeah, that is basically how I am playing Tomb solo. Let's just say that this guy moved on to me at the end of that turn, and then I would go over here and I would draw a random card, and a weakness. So this roaming monster would curse me, and I would have to attach this to a character, which would give me a holiness of 3, but I only have 1 HP. So I'd have to choose one of my characters to give this to, and then that roaming monster resets back to its starting spot. And for test, it's pretty simple. Like, let's say this was my dice pooled, a green, 2 blue, and a red. And everything has a target number. So if the target number was 4, I'd have to roll that, and I would have to get 4 successes, which I just got 0. This game is really hard. You aren't rolling a ton of successes, especially on these green D10 here, which are really pretty crappy. But yeah, so I'm having fun with it. Like I said though, I do wish there was an inherently better game just out of the box. But as far as all the games that I talk about that I want to fix, this one I believe is the easiest to do so, because the rules are pretty simple. It's a pretty straightforward game. You're not having to deal with a lot of like moving pieces and scenarios, or worrying about typos in cards that could break the game, kind of like, in something like Skull Tales, which needs to be fixed, or in something like, I think, like Dream Wars. There are games that are cool, they have cool stuff, but just they need some help. Tomb is almost there. Tomb is so close to being a really cool game, especially a really cool solo game. And I haven't quite nailed it yet, but I am getting there, I think. So if you guys play this game solo and you have any ideas, let me know. If you like any of my ideas and you want to develop them further, let me know. I'm going for things that are simple, things that don't add complexity, and things that are easy to remember. Some kind of Doom counter might be cool, building up threat as you walk through that could trigger traps or dungeon. Maybe you could draw a certain number of traps from the Tomb cards and have a trap deck, and there would be different ways that you could trigger traps or something like that. So yeah, let me know, guys. And I do recommend picking this game up if you can find it for a good price, because like I said, there is a very cool game bubbling just underneath the surface. And on top of that, you just get so many cool characters and so much cool art. I mean, just look at so every single card has unique art. And like your tactics deck here has all kinds of cool stuff. I don't know how much money they must have spent on just the art in this game alone. I want to find some of my favorite artists and maybe contact them and look them up, because there's some of the art in here that I would love to see if the artists are still working on other games. I'm sure many of them are. There's got to be some overlap with Magic or something. So, all right, guys. Well, that is it. That is my quick look at Tomb and how I'm developing it to be a fun and exciting solo experience. We will talk to you later, and take it easy. Bye-bye.